The story opens in the middle of the vast Pacific Ocean. A 23-year-old woman named Tammy wakes up in the pitch-black deck. She is waist-deep in freezing seawater inside the cabin of a heavily damaged luxury yacht. Everything around her is shattered, and she has a bleeding gash on her forehead. Panicked, Tammy screams out for her fiancé, Richard, but she receives no response. Tammy fights her way through the floating furniture, desperately trying to reach the deck before the water rises any higher. When she finally pushes the hatch open, she sees that the yacht's sails are ripped to shreds. The main mast is snapped clean in half, its heavy rigging dragging in the water. She scans the horizons, but Richard is nowhere to be found. As the silence of the ocean sets in, Tammy's mind escapes to the past. 5 months earlier, a younger, carefree Tammy arrives in Tahiti. She is a free spirit who left her hometown of San Diego to travel the world. She works odd jobs at local docks and hostels, doing whatever it takes to fund her adventure. She has no interest in a stable career, and she certainly is not looking for love. However, love finds her anyway. While working at the local marina one afternoon, a custom-built sailboat catches her eye. She sees a man repairing it and walks over. He introduces himself as Richard. He is a British sailor who built his own boat and has been sailing the globe solo for years. There is an instant spark between them. Richard is deeply fascinated by Tammy's fearless independence, while Tammy is drawn to Richard's confidence and his respect for the ocean. Their romance blossoms quickly. They spend their days exploring the green cliffs of Tahiti, diving into waterfalls, and sharing intimate conversations under the stars. Richard takes her out on his boat, patiently teaching her sailing. At this time, Tammy feels like she has found a true home in a person. The memory fades, and Tammy is brought back into her nightmare. It is her first full day post-hurricane. She patches her bleeding head with a makeshift bandage using a torn shirt and a roll of duct tape. She climbs to the highest point of the boat, scanning the surrounding water with binoculars. Suddenly, Tammy notices Richard clinging to a lifeboat a few hundred yards away. Tammy's survival instincts kick in. Because the yacht has no functioning motor, she leaps into the open water. Tying herself to the main boat with a rope, she swims frantically toward the lifeboat. She reaches Richard and pulls him aboard. However, Richard is in a very bad shape. His ribs are shattered, and his right leg is broken so bad that the bone is protruding through his skin. He is in agonizing pain, highly feverish, and entirely immobile. Tammy drags him onto a makeshift bed on the deck, hanging a small cloth to protect him from the sun. Seeing his condition, Tammy realizes that she must be the captain, the doctor, and the sole provider all herself now. Tammy tends to Richard's wounds. She remembers the proposition that doomed them. A few weeks into their blossoming romance in Tahiti, Richard bumps into a wealthy couple at a restaurant. They own a luxury yacht. They inform Richard that they need to fly back to London for a family emergency, but their yacht needs to be delivered to San Diego. Knowing Richard's reputation as an expert sailor, they offer him a lucrative deal. They promise a $10,000 cash payout and first-class return tickets. Richard and Tammy eagerly accept the task of sailing the yacht across the vast Pacific Ocean from Tahiti to California. Richard is ecstatic and asks Tammy to join him as his co-captain. But Tammy is reluctant as sailing across the open ocean for over a month is highly dangerous, and returning to San Diego means confronting the hometown she ran away from. But Richard promises to keep her safe. He assures her that with the $10,000, they can comfortably sail anywhere in the world together. Won over by the promise of a shared future, she agrees. Back on the wrecked boat, there is no luxury left. Tammy pumps gallons of seawater out of the flooded cabin using a manual hand pump, blistering her hands in the process. She desperately searches for any remaining supplies, but finds nothing but 3 intact cans of Spam, a half-full jar of peanut butter, 1 box of stale crackers, 2 gallons of fresh water, and a compass. It is a terrifyingly small amount of food to survive on. Tommy then realizes they are thousands of miles from land. With the radio dead and engine flooded, Tommy has to make a strategic decision. Continuing to California is mathematically impossible. The ocean currents will not take them there without a functional motor. Using the compass and her navigation skills, she calculates that traveling to Hawaii is the only viable option. It is a very tiny piece of land in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. If she miscalculates her navigation by even a single degree, they will miss the islands entirely and drift into the endless ocean until they starve to death. Working through physical exhaustion, Tommy manages to makeshift a sail using a broken spinnaker pole and a torn piece of cloth. It is fragile, but as the wind catches the fabric, the broken boat lurches forward and they begin moving. Relieved by the slight momentum, Tommy's mind drifts back to the early days of their voyage. In the flashback, the yacht is in its full glory. Tommy and Richard have the time of their lives. They drink wine, dive off the bow into the warm Pacific waters, and enjoy a deeply romantic connection. One evening, Richard takes Tommy to the bow of the ship as the sun sets over the horizon. He speaks earnestly about how the ocean is both beautiful and terrifying, but that having her by his side makes the vastness feel like home. Reaching into his pocket, he pulls out a ring and asks Tammy to marry him. She immediately says yes, and they share an embrace, completely unaware of the tragedy waiting for them. In the present timeline, the days slowly turn into weeks. The sun beats down, turning the deck so hot it feels like an oven. Tammy's lips are blistered, her skin is peeling from severe sunburn, and her body is withering away from malnutrition. She strictly saves their meager food supply, gently feeding Richard a spoonful of peanut butter while she consumes almost nothing. She carefully pours measured caps of fresh water down his throat to keep his fever at bay. Under the weight of isolation and starvation, Tommy's mental state begins to fracture. She suffers from intense hallucinations. At one point, she imagines a massive commercial cargo ship approaching them. She fires off her flare gun in joy, only to realize the horizon is empty. The isolation is deafening. Yet, whenever she feels like giving up, Richard's voice anchors her. He teaches her how to adjust the rigging, how to read the stars for accurate navigation, and constantly reminds her of her inner strength. He whispers that she has to keep fighting. As Tammy stares out at the endless water, the movie reveals the event that broke the ship. Tammy and Richard were a few weeks into their journey when the yacht's radio crackled with a warning of a Category 4 hurricane forming, and its direct path was heading right for them. Richard tries to alter their course, pushing the boat to its absolute limits to bypass the massive storm, but it is too late. The hurricane still catches them. 40-foot waves crash heavily over the deck. The sky turns black in the middle of the day. Realizing the life-threatening danger, Richard screams and sends Tommy below the deck. Suddenly, the boat is caught by a rogue wave and the yacht flips upside down. Tommy is thrown hard against the interior cabin wall, knocking her unconscious. Up on the deck, Richard is thrown into the black ocean. The story brings us back to the present. It is day 39. Tommy is starving, deeply sunburned, and is at the brink of death. She looks over at Richard, who is still lying quietly. He looks back at her, his eyes filled with sorrow, and softly tells her that she has to let him go. Tommy cries and shakes her head, refusing his request. The perspective slowly shifts. The wind blows, revealing the empty deck. The heartbreaking reality sets in. The film reveals that after the storm passed on that first day, Tammy woke up in the flooded cabin alone. She did not see Richard clinging to a lifeboat. Instead, she saw the lifeboat floating upside down and empty. Richard drowned in the hurricane on the very first day of the disaster. The Richard that Tammy has interacted with for the past 39 days was a hallucination. It was a coping mechanism created by her shattered mind to keep her from giving up. She needed him to survive, so her mind brought him back. On day 41, starving, grieving, and completely exhausted, Tammy looks out at the horizon. She sees a bird and the green peaks of land. Tammy realizes that she has successfully navigated a boat across 1,500 miles of open ocean using only a compass and a watch. She has reached Hawaii. A Japanese research ship spots the floating wreckage of the yacht and alters its course. When the rescue crew boards the ruined vessel, they find Tammy. She is frail, weighing barely 80 pounds, and covered in deep scars, but she is alive. As they pull her away from the wreckage and onto the safety of their ship, she looks back at the broken boat one last time, silently saying a final goodbye to the man she loved. The story ends with a revelation about the real-life woman this film is based on. Despite the horrific trauma and immense loss she endured, she never stopped sailing. She eventually became a licensed ship captain, proving that while the ocean took the love of her life, it could not break her spirit. She survived because the memory of him refused to let her die.